You know, I think, Carson, the one thing, Carson's excited to get back in playing. He's been preparing last couple weeks to play. He was excited to get back in the game. You know, I think Coach talked about it. Taylor's been a little beat up. We've had some issues. Some of them have been stuff Taylor done. Some of it hasn't been his control. I think it gives a little bit of a spark of Carson coming in. Like we said, he's healthy. He's energized, ready to go. I think, there's not going to see much difference as far as, what we want to do. We still want to be physical, and be balanced in that way. But I think just, his excitement and energy coming in will be good.
And for you, going kind of to that point as a play caller, you got Terry and Curtis and Jahan outside. You got the big arm and Carson. But how much do you have to work to make sure that you maintain what the identity has been? Is that a hard juggling act there?
I mean, it's the same as it has been. We want to be physical. We want to let the offensive line come off and set blocks. And, we've played some good pass rushers in the last couple of weeks. You don't want those guys just be able to pin their ears back. That plays into it a lot. Obviously, we're playing some good pass rushers in Myles Garrett and Clowney coming up in this game. So, you never really want to be one-dimensional. It's all part of it.
Sort of a play calling question. You had the two fourth and shorts last game, and Brian didn't get either one of the carries. Just was that a circumstance thing, or what went into that decision?
Well, Brian was in the red zone, and he ran 3 plays in a row, and then he came out of the game. So Antonio was ready to go. I think he got a little banged up on the third down play. It was 4th and 1, and we were running it. Antonio's been in that situation and been successful. Obviously we didn't get it. So that was just, I think he was a little worn down at the time. That wasn't like a personnel decision that was made. And then the other one was it was a sneak. We got directly on the ball. We didn't sub for whatever reason. They held the ball, which, normally they don't do when you sub. And it was less than a yard. We felt good about the sneak. Obviously didn't get the result that we wanted.
And Jahan, despite missing several games because of the injury, he's got 7 touchdowns, which is pretty high up among the league leaders, and he's got actually he's got the highest percentage of touchdowns to targets in the league. Do some guys just have a knack for making the plays that lead to getting
I think his skill set, he has really good concentration, really good ball skills. He catches the ball with people around him. I mean, that's all the red zone. You know what I mean? There's going to be people around you in the red zone. You got to have great concentration and ball skills to pull it in. He's got all of those things. So, and then he's got some good opportunities that have come his way. But it is pretty remarkable to have 7 touchdowns and missing 5 games, and then kind of being limited in some of those other games when his first couple games back. But it's just testament to him. He's a very good player, works hard, and important to him, and he's very competitive. I saw him, I think a couple games ago say, when the ball's in the air, he's going to go get it. That's his job, and that's his mentality, and he does it.
You kind of briefly addressed it's a very different offense than the one Carson left there in week 6, in terms of identity and what you guys do. Are there things about that excite you or that you feel he'll work particularly well with?
Yeah, I think it'll help. I think it takes a little bit of the pressure off of him. Not having quite as many pass attempts. Again, you never know how the game's going to go. We might have to get into that mode or whatever at some point. But yeah, I think being able to run the ball, setting that up with the play action pass, or having that set up the play action pass. I think that's just stuff that'll help him.
You also kind of allude to the running backs being a little beat up. Obviously, Gibson didn't practice. You've got Brian Robinson had whatever it was, 21, 22 carries, I think. How do you manage that group? How do you make sure you get what you need from the run game while working with that personnel?
Yeah, we have faith in our backs. We feel like we got a good group. Obviously, B-Rob and Antonio are the guys you talked about, but Jonathan, even Jared Patterson, if we need them, those guys will step up. And they'll be ready to go. They've all got experience playing in this league. They've all had success. So, varied levels of success. It's week 17. Guys are on this roster for a reason. Everyone that we have that we've kept around for this long, it's because we expect them to play. So if their number's called, I have a lot of faith that they'll step up and do their job.
Ron has talked about Carson's kind of improvement in picking up blitzes and those sorts of things. Just where have you kind of noticed Carson's growth, even when he was sidelined and further learning the playbook, and where do you think he's at just comfortability-wise with your scheme?
I think a lot of times, when guys, get injured or they stop playing and you kind of take a step back when you've already been out there and you kind of see it from another perspective, it can help just provide clarity. I think, you saw him when he came in against San Francisco. Obviously, we were down a 2-minute type mode, but just being able to get the ball out of his hand, distribute it, not trying to think, hey, there's going to be something better, let me wait and see, but just understand where the guys are, get it out and let guys catch and run, you know what I mean, and not taking those extra hits. I think that was an illustration of that. He's been really good in the meetings, this whole time. That he hasn't been playing, whether he was, when he was on IR or when he was the backup, of just asking questions and trying to get that further understanding of just, where everybody's going to be, how the routes are going to be run, and just he always knew the plays, but just like the understanding of the intricacies inside of them. And I think that's just helped with making decisions quicker.
How much do you read into just his appearance against the 49ers? It was 16 throws, but it was the fourth quarter of a game that was getting on the hand.
Yeah, I mean, the first drive, it's a 2-score game still at that point. And they started coming after us with pressures. I mean, I think you evaluate it for what it is. I mean, the last drive, yeah, they were playing soft, at that point of the game. But it is still, every play, we evaluate every play as far as like, this is the expectation. Did you achieve it? And I think he did a nice job of that.
With Terry, obviously his numbers with Taylor have been a little bit better than his numbers were with Carson earlier in the year. What can you do to kind of get him going as you make this quarterback switch?
There's a few, there's a few things that you can do. Some of that was a little bit of circumstance. There was obviously a little bit more of a comfort level because Taylor and Terry had played together before. There's some things we can do to try to get the ball in Terry's hands quickly. We were doing that early as far as primary. Teams have been doing a good job and always try to do a good job of taking Terry away. I think the thing that's going to help Terry is kind of the emergence of some of our other guys. Earlier in the year, Jahan was a rookie. No one really knew, what I mean? So he got some good looks. Curtis was coming off the injury, not really sure. And now, as the year's gone on, it's opened up some things from Terry that way as well.
You've had almost 2 years as OC here and then the little run at the end of Carolina. The job is very conducive to second guessing. Just what do you make of that aspect of it, that you come in here and people are asking, oh, why didn't you have this guy in? And then the next week maybe there's another play where it's like, oh, why didn't you do this? Just that whole nature of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's always easy. I mean, I do it to myself. You look back and you say, we could have done something differently here. You could have done something differently there. You always want to stay aggressive. I think the longer that you do this, you can, everyone has like scars or something that like, man, I tried something and it like blew up, but you just got to trust your preparation, you know what I mean? And trust your instincts, and then understand like no one's going to bat 1,000, so, that's why you trust the players that if we call play and we don't get a good look or the defense makes a play, we protect and we move on. And, you can't get gun shy, because something doesn't work. I mean, you can call the most conservative, easiest play in the world, and the worst possible outcome could happen. So again, the biggest thing to me is we spend a lot of time as an offensive staff, and I personally spend a lot of time of researching the defense and trying to put our guys in the best situation possible. You put the game plan together, and just trust your preparation and trust your instincts, and and go with it and trust the players, because ultimately, it's about the guys, it's about our players and making plays. And I'm not throwing the ball or catching the ball. And I don't mean that as far as to take it off me. I'm just trying to give them the credit. Like when they make big plays, like they're making big catches and stuff like that. So, we got a lot of talented guys, and we just got to trust those guys to go do their job and make plays.
Managing your personal scars gotten easier now that you're a couple years into it, or does it ever get easier?
Yeah, it always gets easier week by week. I mean, like it's harder earlier in the week, and then you work through it. I mean, you kind of flush it on that early Monday, and you get ready for the game. So it's all part of the job.
Given the state of the line and Carson's tendency to hold the ball, I guess to overcome that and make sure that you guys don't take pressures like that, is that something you stress to Carson? Is that play calling? How do you overcome some of the bad results you had earlier in the year?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can always help the line with protection as far as if we're trying to get some balls down the field where you're chipping or you're sliding one way, chipping one way, sliding the other, stuff like that. And then the quarterback just got to understand, sometimes, and it's not just Carson, it's quarterbacks in general. You'll pass up one thing because you think something else is better, and you just can't do that. The ball's got to come out. You got to come out in rhythm. The receivers. I've talked to you guys before about pass pro. It's not just the line. We got to get open so the quarterback can throw the ball, and part of that, is mixing in some quick throws. But with the guys we have, we want to be able to attack and get the ball down the field. And sometimes you got to hold it a little longer, so you got to make sure we're matching the protections with what we want. But ultimately, the quarterback's got to have the clock in his head where, hey, this thing's got to come out. And if the route doesn't come up the way it's supposed to, find a check down or throw it away, and get us to the next down.
Did any concepts or moments stick out to you during those meetings when Carson was injured, or the backup that showed you he was making progress?
No, not so much. Nothing that I can just pull, right now. But just in general, the process of, hey, a lot of times what we'll say is your hitch is your feet or the clock in your head. So we're supposed to throw this route off one hitch, and then the next route is off your second hitch. And if you haven't done that by then it's fine to check down or throw the ball away. And if you're hanging too long on the route that you're supposed to throw on the first hitch and second hitch, then that's where it gets out of whack and the ball ends up getting held too long. And then also too, we've had some opportunities where guys have gotten beaten and there's just nothing you can do about that too. Guys getting hit when he's getting his back foot in the ground, and those are things we've got to prevent, obviously.
How much similarity is there between the 49ers defense and the Browns? Very different personnel, I understand, but just Joe Woods, his background in San Fran. How much?
Yeah, there is a lot of similarity scheme-wise. They like to do the same types of things. They have some really good rushers, just like San Francisco does personnel-wise. Some really good players in secondary. I mean, Denzel Ward's a top corner. But scheme-wise, yeah, it's very close. They both have their own little personal twist on it, just like anybody does. But it's from the same family for sure.
And does that help at all week to week?
Yeah, a little bit. There's some stuff that you can carry over concept-wise. Some of it changes because the personnel changes. So certain people you want to attack, or they're maybe different. They defend something a little worse just because of the person. Not necessarily scheme. But yeah, it does help when you play a similar scheme.
And on the offensive line, having lost Chase Roulier and then Tyler Larson in consecutive seasons, what has sort of been the ripple effect? Do you feel the impact of not having those guys in there?
Yeah, I think anytime you lose guys that are starters or backups, there is going to be some sort of adjustment. I think the guys that we have stepped in, they've done well, and we've done well of just not making it a thing. I mean, this is part of the league, and we know that injuries happen. It's unfortunate, but we got to make sure that we don't, whoever is coming in, that we're helping those guys as much as we can, not putting them in bad positions. And then, it's an opportunity for those players, and they got to step up and do their job too. It's part of that's the balance of it.
Scott, on when the fan sees a play call work or not work, that's how they judge a failure.
Yeah.
When you're looking back at it, when you're watching it, how is it hard to when you're self-scouting it, to say this was the play call versus this was just not executed?
No, it's pretty easy to make that adjustment. There's sometimes when I'll call me man, that just that wasn't a good play for that situation. And then there's other times that you're man, we had a great look, and we just didn't execute. And that's that's one of the things that we have to do. Our coaches do a great job of in game. We might run a play, and it gets no yards or negative gain. But it's hey, we want to run that again, and if we just make this little adjustment, we'll get a good play out of it. So those are things sometimes at the time you're man, I ain't calling that again. That was a disaster. But it's no, we should call it again. We got exactly what we wanted. We just need to make this quick adjustment, and then bam. So those are the things that you talk about during series. Maybe get into a similar concept or doing it from a different way. If something is really successful, getting back to it, but again in a different way. But that's one of the biggest things is is it hey, did they get us scheme wise, or did we just have somebody that missed their assignment, and that's why the play didn't work.
Thank you, Coach.
So thanks guys. Happy New Year.